Hi guys, bringing you a video today on soldiers' Holdall from the First World War period, so the 1910s, 1920s, as I say in the description, in the title of the video. I'll go over the contents of this here and how they might differ slightly for the time period we're looking at. Starting right to left as we did the previous video on this for consistency's sake. The first thing you have, of course, is the spare laces for the hobnail boots, spare leather laces there, and they're square in form, square cut. Can be picked up easily for reenacting purposes. If you need to find pairs of these, you can buy them on eBay or all sorts of places, not a problem. Next to this we have the toothbrush. This is a reproduction stamped 1916, which dates this particular Holdall setup obviously to mid to late First World War. But this style of toothbrush, obviously with minus the date stamp, was used by the British Army, well, by British troops and the public in general, from the Victorian era right the way through to the start of the Second World War, when plastic began to become more common. So these are common to find without the date stamp on, and they're a useful thing to have for doing the Holdall filling as a Holdall filler, because they cover a lot of time, a lot of ground time period wise. To go with the toothbrush, on the left here we have a tin of Bibbing's IDL tooth powder. Now, I've seen various dates presented for this online. Some people say 1910s, some people say 1920s. The sort of Art Nouveau lettering and design and things makes it of the period. If I find out these are indeed 1920s, I will swap it for something else. But tooth powder, obviously still used by some people today in preference to toothpaste. It's essentially a powdered form thereof, so it's a dry form. Without, obviously before toothpaste became as common as it is now, a lot of people used tooth powder, and some still do. So a little tin of that. Next along in the Holdall we have a horn comb, and obviously before plastics became a thing, before plastics were really developed, horn was often used for things like this, also handles on cutlery and so on. So a horn comb, this is real, it's modern made, but it is a real one. It warped a little bit unfortunately, but still does the job. And yeah, so you obviously carry a comb, and in this case made of horn. It's also possible you might have seen metal combs, as you've seen in my video on the 1930s, 1940s Holdall. Here we have another thing that is not the prescribed contents of the Holdall, but is often mentioned by veterans. Seen several accounts of nail scissors being carried, and they obviously just in the field it makes sense to have something with you to trim your nails. And this also includes a little nail file on the back of the blade there, so they are indeed a little pair of old nail scissors, which I keep in there, based on veterans' accounts. Certainly something I would carry with me. Next we have the razor, and this is a straight razor in its case. A quick look at the case here. Helps if I get it the right way up. So you can see there, Joseph Fenton and Sons of Sheffield, good old Sheffield steel. Open it up here and have a look. So it's just a standard straight razor, again horn handles on this, black horn handles, and you can see there, you can see the markings on the blade. It's a bit rusty, this one, needs to clean up, but certainly not something I'm going to be using, so there we go. And then along from that we have a shaving brush, wooden handled shaving brush that you can see here. Very, very simple, very plain, just emblematic of what it's symbol an example of what would have been carried. There's nothing special about it, it's just a wooden handled shaving brush. Next along we have a bar of soap, and this is a bar of Pears soap, which sort of it gives a theme to this Holdall in a way, because it was quite an expensive soap at the time, but this is set up specifically, this Holdall I use for sort of mid to late war example of kit carried. And by that point quite a lot of soldiers who joined up weren't necessarily from working class backgrounds. Quite a lot were from middle class backgrounds, clerks, and even sort of higher paid jobs than that, bankers and so forth, who had joined up, and their families, and indeed had enough money to send comforts out to them and things like this. And perhaps, as I say, this is an example of that, is perhaps a nicer brand of soap than you might typically see earlier on. And the advantage of Pears was, at the time, the dish in the top, the dish form in the top of the soap, and the fact that it's quite a soft soap meant you could actually use it for shaving. They made shaving sticks out of the same stuff that they sold as bars. So in that sense, it serves a dual purposes. You can hold the block and use it to lather up and shave, as well as using it to wash. So that's just an interesting little fact about Pears soap of the time. I made the label for this myself based on a period advertisement and little stickers and everything on there. So it's a good thing to have. Saves taking. It's a modern block in a period wrapper that I made. The final thing to look at here is this little wad of Isol toilet paper. Toilet paper, well, ablutions in the trenches were never particularly pleasant. Certainly, I've seen accounts of both Isol toilet paper being carried, but also the use of newspaper was very common at the time. And certainly, someone I've spoken to who himself spoke to veterans, including a little experiment he did. I forget who it was. I do apologise to the person who told me about this. I will have to go and look up the old forum post that I saw this on. But basically provided a veteran with various items and a Holdall and asked them to fill it as they would have had it. And one of the things that was included was some scraps of newspaper. And apparently newspaper was very common to find in the trenches. Obviously the men manning it rotated on a I think a 3-day basis at some points, and I can't remember the exact time that you spent in the front line rotating around, but people used to obviously take reading material, because actually manning the front line was quite boring a lot of the time if things weren't going on. You were just standing sentry, and newspapers would be left lying around from troops who'd occupied the trenches, so there was always a good supply. It saves you having to carry anything else, so that's another option. Rather than having Isol toilet paper with you would be to have that. So I hope you found that interesting. Just a quick look through the contents here and a little bit of explanation regarding them. And as I always say, until next time, bye for now.